Same place we've been filming that whale. Seen him heading out to open sea there earlier on the way out here. But anyway, got 3 cut plugs out. And I'm more doing a test fish for tomorrow. I'm trying to figure out if it's going to be more productive if I sit and cut plug or if I troll. And so far, cut plug has been pretty good. There's 4 boats around. I haven't seen anybody catch anything, and I've had 2 bites in the cut plug already. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, I watched the Sean Ryan podcast. He was interviewing that man that came forward with Stephen Greer, ex-Marine, who saw some kind of bizarre craft with bizarre capabilities that the public doesn't know about, apparently. And it was absolutely involved in human trafficking. This human trafficking thing, it's a little out of hand. There's so many whistleblowers coming forward. So many of them get discredited, ignored, not getting the attention they probably deserve. But when it comes to other topics, you can't get much more of a huge pattern than human trafficking, right? It's real sad, creepy, and alarming. It's frustrating when just a little dork like me that can't really do much, I guess, but share the topic. Try to get people talking about topics and get them aware, right? So much going on. There's just so much insanity going on. Anyway, let's get some voices heard. I can get that done. That's what I am doing, and that is very important. So getting voices heard is very, very important. Oh, there's a bunch of salmon. I'm watching I have a depth sounder. It shows fish underneath you. There's 3 of them going by right now. They're checking out my gear. Now, let's hear someone, shall we? This titled "The Voice in Your Head." Don't we all have one of those? Sometimes we should listen, sometimes we shouldn't. I stayed on the fence about sending the story to you because I've never told anyone about this, and it still bothers me to this day. My name is Harold. I'm 66 years old, and this happened when I was in my early 20s while I was deer hunting by myself. At first, I never had an encounter with a Sasquatch, but I'm aware of, except maybe this. I had no idea until your channel that this was even a thing people were writing in about. I just watched you in April 30th, 21 video where you said you never had that voice in your head before. Well, I have, and to this day it creeps me out. I was sitting on watch one morning on a rock cut the deer used. I was sitting in a dark patch of pines when all of a sudden a voice that wasn't my voice came into my head and said, "Kill yourself." Now let me say that I wasn't suicidal, never have been or will be. Besides, being a sin is a cowardly way out in my mind. I've known people who have done it, and I couldn't bring myself to go to their funeral. Without hesitation, I unloaded my shotgun and left wondering what the F just happened to me. I hunted there many times before that and after without anything ever happening again. I never spoke to another soul about that morning. It scared the shit out of me. for a little while, and I didn't go back there alone for quite a while. I didn't know anything like the mind speak till your channel, so thanks for that. It's taken all these years wondering what the hell happened, and now I have an answer. I'll end this here because I know I'm rambling, which means it's still got kind of effed up. So just know you've helped me, and I thank you for that. Okay, well, that's a good thing. You have the voice in your head, people getting spoken to without audible words or speech from somebody's mouth to your ear, but instead it goes between your ears. It's a huge pattern. You can't ignore it. Many insist on ignoring it. Oh, I got a bite. Alright. Let's hear somebody else. Thanks for sending that in, man. I'm glad it helped. I'm super stoked this has helped. That's what this place is for. Like this is read, this is titled My Bigfoot Story in California. Hi, my name is Dion Childs. I live in San Jose, California. I'm nobody special, just a regular guy who loves to hunt and camp in the outdoors, just like the rest of us. I'm 50 years old and I'm a mechanic that works for a school district in Sunnyvale, California in the Silicon Valley. I would say that I'm a self-taught outdoorsman that's been hunting for many years. I wouldn't say I'm a very successful hunter, but I spent a lot of time in the outdoors with my brother, deer hunting in the Sierra Nevada mountain range. I'd like to tell you my story. I've had 2 encounters with what I believe was a Bigfoot, Sasquatch. 2017, I went on a D6 hunting trip in California, Kennedy Meadows, with my brother Jason and good friend Rodney. It was a pack trip. I was super excited because this would be my first hunting trip on horseback. It was a 5-day trip where we rode horseback below Levitt Lake near Levitt Meadows. The hunt was amazing. I was able to take the black bear and was super excited on the second night of the trip. This is sounding familiar. However, on the 3rd night we experienced high wind and rain that woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Weird thing is, everything went silent, and this weird feeling came over me, but I can't explain what it felt like. As I laid in my sleeping bag, I could hear footsteps around my tent. I was sleeping with my .357 handgun, and my brother and my friend also had handguns. I screamed out to my brother Jason to stop messing around, and he yelled back saying he's not doing anything, that he's in his tent. I have to say my mind started playing tricks on me because after a while I could feel a presence near me and could hear footsteps crunching the ground near my tent. I laid in my tent trying to talk myself into opening up the tent as fast as I could to see what was behind my tent. The 4-season tent had 2 zippers, and I knew it would take a little bit of time to get out of it. I slowly positioned myself to get out of the tent as fast as I could with my handgun in one hand and turning my headlamp on to see what was out there. I ripped out of the tent as fast as I could and caught a glimpse of a dark, black, huge shadow that scared the shit out of me. I started firing off my handgun in the location where I saw the shadow. Not to kill it, but to scare whatever it was because I wanted it to leave me alone. I'm not sure what it was. I don't think it was a black bear because it stood pretty tall. I woke up my buddy Rodney and Jason, and they said they must have been I must have been dreaming. That gunshot didn't wake them up. I don't know what I saw, but I believe it was a Bigfoot. The next morning when the sun came up, I went to go check the area where I saw the huge shadow. In this location, I had hung the black bear meat, I'd say about 10 feet high on a pretty sturdy line. To my amazement, the meat bag was ripped off the tree and on the ground. My brother and friend said, hold on. My brother and friend said it was probably a black bear that reached up there to grab it, but I don't believe that. There's no way it could have reached that high. Here's another encounter during the D5 hunting trip in 2020. It's kind of in the same location near Kennedy Meadows, but in Eagle Meadows near Relief Reservoir. There have been many wildfires and a lot of the forest land was closed down except for this location for the hunting opener. And a lot of the hunters thought that area was closed down due to the wildfires, so my brother and I had the place to ourselves for the hunting opener, D5. We headed up on our 4-wheel drive quads and I found a beautiful rock overlook and proceeded to hunt. I have to say I started researching my experience from previous hunting trips, so I was a little bit more aware of possible experiences to be had with Bigfoot. The area that I was at was filled with open range cattle, and I was watching them feed through the canyon. I was laying on a rock when that strange feeling came over me again, like it did the last hunting trip in 2017. This time it was around 5 a.m. and I started hearing the timberline cracking as if the trees were falling down. I positioned my spotting scope in the location where I could hear the trees cracking but never saw a thing. I was too afraid to go into the tree line. I have to say this noise continued throughout the whole day. I'm not sure what it was, but it scared the piss out of me. My brother Jason thought it was the cattle moving through the tree line. I have to say it was pretty loud to be cattle knocking down branches off the trees. I don't know what it was. The feeling I got was a gut feeling not to go in the timber line. I just find it kind of strange that I got these gut feelings as if danger was near. These experiences were in the Stanislaus National Forest, California. All right, man. Thanks for sharing those locations. A lot of people are going to appreciate it. Without a doubt. Yeah, no black bear reached up 10 feet. No grizzly bear. Well, man, I would have to be a real big grizzly. I put a bag of meat 8 feet up, and a big boar grizzly got it on my trail camera. I shared that here with you guys before. You can see his head bobbing up and down. And his ears ripped off too. Got some fog creeping up the coast. I hope it doesn't come in and engulf everything. What is there? 1, 2, 3, 4 boats in this little bay, but not too much action going on. Not yet. Anyways, I'm gonna get some more voices heard, but I'm wondering if I can set this up in the boat better so I don't have to. The sun and the white floor is just blinding the crap out of me. I'll try another setup in a minute. Alright, this is definitely a way to do it, just like this. Excuse me. Just caught halibut. Caught a halibut by accident. It's a nice small one though, so I think I'll have a slice of him for dinner, I believe. Now, mark this is red. This is titled I Digress. Dear Steve, thanks again for the work you're doing to ensure people's stories are heard. You're much appreciated. I recently wrote you wanting to know if someone could tell me what my daughter and I saw in Arkansas. The general consensus is that it may have been a dog man. It was very big and incredibly scary. I'm currently researching this creature, so thanks for sharing my story. I mentioned that I had numerous Sasquatch experiences, and after watching more than a handful of your episodes, I realized that sharing my Sasquatch encounters may help others. Therefore, I will endeavor to share them one by one. I'll write a couple of emails just to keep things short. When my siblings and I were children, my grandma would warn us about the woods, saying we should watch out for the Yaona, meaning crying woman, and the Pelon, meaning hairy man, pronounced with a Spanish accent. My first experience, we were raised in Stockton, Utah, located south of Tooele, T-O-O-E-L-E. Sorry, guys. My father would often take us on drives in the mountains. There's a mountain called Baldy. We traveled up and over this mountain and came to a fork in the road. It was an old mining road and had only enough room for a single vehicle, with an occasional wide spot for pulling over. If you turned south, you would come out at the top of Ophir Canyon, O-P-H-I-R Canyon. We turned northwest and continued on till we came to a small creek. We all climbed down from the truck and began to enjoy our day in nature. I was approximately 9 years old. My brother was 7, my baby sister was 2. I remember that all of a sudden I began to feel ill. There was a sloshing sound in my head. I was dizzy. And for some reason unknown to me, I became terrified. My baby sister started crying, and my brother peed his pants. My dad made us get in the truck now. He was shaken. He said we had to leave because of the pelon. I didn't realize it at the time, but my dad endangered all of our lives coming up that mountain like a bat out of hell. I don't know how my dad knew what it was that frightened us. I never saw or heard anything. After this, there were many times when we were in those ochre Mountains, OCCHIR mountains, that we felt we were not alone, / we were being watched. My dad would always immediately cart us home. My second experience when I was 20. I was a newlywed living in northwest Arkansas. My husband at the time worked nights and weekends, so one weekend I decided to go camping with a few friends. Packed up the car with a tent, sleeping bags, and a couple of coolers. I don't really know where we went. It was somewhere in the Ozarks, south and west of Springdale. We traveled for a time down a winding, hilly, tree-lined road to the end where there was an old campsite. We pitched the tent, began unloading the rest of our gear, and proceeded to gather firewood for our fire. The sun had not gone down yet, but it felt dark because of the dense woods. The next events took place in a matter of minutes. As we were all gathering around the fire pit, we heard a noise that sounded like a baseball bat hitting a tree. We were all instantly on alert. One of the guys said, "Someone's here," and yelled, "Hello." The other guy in our group yelled, "We know you're there." Another whack, opposite the first whack. Then a rock the size of a cantaloupe landed between a couple of us. That's really intimidating, isn't it? The size of those rocks being thrown and the distance. We grabbed everything we could, shoving it all in the car. We didn't even bother to pack the tent properly. As we were piling into the car, we smelled a stench that made our eyes water and we gagged. One girl vomited, and we got the hell out of there. We were all silent for a bit when one of the guys started laughing and said, "Y'all, we just survived a skunk ape attack." A skunk ape? First time I've heard of this. Took a few years for me to equate it with the Sasquatch. Needless to say, I've been very careful when in the woods ever since. I never discussed the experience with any of the friends I shared this traumatic experience. Perhaps one of them has written in. I'll write more when my nerves calm down. Thanks again, Steve. Forgive myself. Others, a safe place to share. Most sincerely, Leona Valdez. Leona, appreciate you. Make sure you keep writing in. I'm sure you probably have. This is an older email, an email folder that I'm finding here, you guys, all right? So I may get a repeat in here by accident. No harm done. If I do. Oh, the sun's starting to lick me now. Need some shade. Whoa. How's that halibut flopping around? Forget somebody's on board with you, right? All right. Let's see if I can do this in the sun. New England Sasquatch Marine Veteran rewritten. G'day, Steve. I wrote you before, but realized my email might have been kind of vague. My name is Paul Perry. I'm 31 from Massachusetts. I grew up an avid outdoorsman, fishing and hunting and camping, etc. To give you a little background, in '08 I left for the Marines. I was 18 and the War on Terror was in full swing. After 2 deployments and a Purple Heart, I came home due to wounds sustained in Afghanistan and couldn't re-enlist. So in January 2012 I moved back home. I instantly jumped back into the outdoors life and rekindling a relationship I had prior to leaving. I started hiking with my now wife of 13 years. Steve, fighting insurgents, getting into firefights with other humans who are as cunning and witty as you, hunting each other is a thrill like no other. No doubt. No, I'm not a psycho. I just feel to cope with war, you do what you got to do. Most people went to war said it's flat out, it's exciting going to war, right? And horrific, of course, but they've all stated that it is exciting. Lots of them anyways. My way of coping, sorry, sounds harsh, but my survival depended on quick reaction, no hesitation. So, laughing as J-Dam fell from a jet blowing up an insurgent stronghold is just the way it is. Now that you know a little about my experience, was the late summer 2013. Took my wife hiking at old Civil War fort. It has some decent beginner trails marked with color markers on the trees. We started out late in the afternoon, so it got dark quick. As the darkness fell, we got lost, almost, circling the same areas. This is where my experience is different than most. There was no crunching, no tree snaps, there was silence. Steve, I don't even know what made me look, other than sixth sense, but I looked through the moonlit trees and seen a silhouette of a giant figure running through the trees. Steve, I've been shot. I know what it's like to accept death and have a mindset that I'm going to die. This trumped that tenfold. This figure couldn't have been more than 75 yards, which means I should have heard it. As a Marine, I'm trained to shoot 500 yards, iron sights, and I have a good judge of yardage. This was close to 60 to 75 yards and paralleling us. I drew my sidearm, grabbed my wife on the back of her neck, and pushed her through prickle bushes and made our own path until I seen a light on a house come on in someone's backyard. Firearm still drawn. I didn't feel safe till I was on the pavement of a street well lit up by street lights. Thankfully, she's seen what I've seen, but I can't explain it. 7 to 8 feet. Being. Running clearly. Clearing. Sorry, you guys. I'm getting so many reflections blazing me in the eyeballs and on my phone. Thankfully, she's seen what I've seen, but I can't explain it. 7 to 8 feet. Being. Running. Clearing distance no man could clear in such a short time. What was creepy was there was a silence over the woods, including that being running. That day scared the shit out of me. I would redeploy to Afghanistan twice over rather than see what I saw that day. Have you ever heard of these things, of these beings having encounters where it was silence? It's been 9 years and that replays in my head daily, almost trying to figure out what the F I've seen. Yep, it happens all the time, man. You're not alone, you're not crazy. It's happened so many times, it's silly. It's a full-on, strong pattern in our face. Oh, I think I got another bite. Oh, alright, here we go. Where to start? This is titled Sasquatch in Southern Utah. Well, my name is Ken, I'm 56 years old. I spend my summers camping on Cedar Mountain with my wife, the grandson, and whoever else likes to come with me. My experience happened the summer 2019 in the Mammoth Creek area of Cedar Mountain. I got up one morning early to build a fire and make coffee like I always do. I'm always the first one up. So I was getting ready to light the fire, and I heard knocking sounds coming from a direction where nobody camps. The closest campers were at least a mile away. Stopped what I was doing and looked up, didn't see anything. I scanned the tree line and there was nothing. I kept hearing it for about 10 minutes. I said to myself, I know it's you, come over and get a cup of coffee if you want, just jokingly. And the knocking sound stopped abruptly. I sat there and waited for the sound to start up again, but it never did. So I went about the day, doing with camp chores, cooking breakfast, chopping wood, and whatever else needed to be done. Later that afternoon, we were sitting around the fire talking, and all of a sudden, about 30 yards away, in the tree line, an aspen tree just fell over. We could see in the tree line, and there was nothing over there to make it fall over. No wind or anyone over there messing around, and we all looked at each other like, what the hell? I know trees fall in the forest all the time, but why did that one tree right there by camp decide to fall over? Nothing else happened that summer. I decided to tell my story after hearing the story about the couple that was at Barker Reservoir. It was only about 50 to 60 miles away from where we camp. Love what you're doing. I listen to your stories all the time. I started listening to your stories before you even started talking about Sasquatch, so keep up the great work. One day everyone will find out the truth. Yeah, those days are here. We are finding out. We are finding out the truth. It's just what we're going to allow ourselves to accept, right? Or how bad we want to know. Or do you want to know? That should be a question for a lot of people. Do you want to know? Are you satisfied with life, the way your life is going right now? You know, if there's anyone out there who knows some truth that you feel society needs to know, and you're terrified of sharing that truth, you can share it with me, and if you want me to share it with the people, I'll do it. But please share it. Alright? No more being scared. Share all you got. Share all you got. It's very, very important. So many people know a lot. There's a lot of people out there that know a lot and they're terrified. Now, thanks for saying that again, man. Sorry, I just went off on a little bit of a semi-battle there. Let's get another voice heard. It's funny. Reading emails is almost like fishing. You just don't know what's going to come up next, right? Or when. Alright, here's another one. This is titled, It Shook the Car. Hi Steve, love your channel. If I find myself getting lost in your videos for hours, lol. I can't say as I've seen every one of them, but I must be close. I've followed you for a little over a year now, and I probably started this email 10 or 15 times before today. I don't know why. I never finish it, but I've told myself, today is the day. I've always spoken to my father about this because he's had a couple experiences himself, so he can relate. Back in 2012, I moved up to Hebron, Maine. I was staying with my father and his wife while I looked for a place of my own. At the time of this experience, I was re-shingling a friend's roof after work hours and on the weekend. One particular night I worked especially late on the roof and I did not start back to my parents' house until around midnight. Whoa, that's a long day. I stayed for dinner and had a few beers with my friend and his wife after a long night's work. Somewhere along my drive home I realized I did not want to bother my father and his wife by coming in so late, so I figured I would just find a place to park for the night and sleep in the car. There was a dirt road about a quarter mile down the street from my father's house that led to a very old cabin, then continued on as a four-wheeler trail to a very beautiful waterfall on Bicknell Brook, Bicknell Brook. I went back there often and normally parked at the cabin and hiked on the waterfall and further upstream, as I love to explore streams and rivers. So it was there by the cabin that I decided to sleep for the night in my car. After fidgeting around and finding a nice level spot to park, I settled in and read a few chapters from a Louis L'Amour novel. I love westerns and anything that has to do with westward expansion and exploration. It was probably around 2 a.m. when I finally put the book down and turned off the lights in my car so I could get some rest. I just reached that point where you can feel yourself drifting to sleep when I heard a branch break not very far away. I sat up, grabbed my flashlight, shining out to the window in the direction of the noise I heard, hoping to catch a glimpse of a moose or bear, or possibly a deer. There's plenty of moose and bear in that area, so I figured it had to be something fairly large, as the sound was pretty loud. After scanning the area with my flashlight for about a minute, I gave up and laid back down. Once again, I had reached the point of slumber when something smacked the roof of my car, very firmly, right above the driver's seat. I instantly shot straight up so fast that I damn near knocked myself out when I hit my head on the ceiling of the car. So many things ran through my mind in an instant, and I came to the conclusion that it could not have been a tree branch or anything of a sort to make that kind of sound. Here comes the fog. It was the sound you can only make with an open palm landing firmly against a flat surface. I was about halfway to the driver's seat, crawling my way from the back seat when I heard large rocks rolling down the embankment I was parked adjacent to, about 20 feet from me. Immediately following the sound of the rocks rolling down the embankment, I heard two distinct thuds on the ground. The first thud sounded like it was right at the base of the embankment, and the second thought sounded to be about 5 feet from my vehicle. I felt the vibration in the center console of my car from each thud as I was crawling my way into the driver's seat. I thought I could not be more terrified in that moment, but I was very wrong. I had just gotten my left leg down onto the floor in front of the driver's seat and was pulling my right leg up over the shifter when my car began to rock back and forth very violently. The car probably rocked 3 or 4 times in either direction in the time it took me to get my right leg down under the steering wheel and start my vehicle. The last shove on the driver's side of my car lifted both tires off the ground about 2 inches, I would estimate. I was screaming as I started my vehicle and turned on my headlights. My driver's side window was about a third of the way open, and all I could think was something was about to come through it after me. As soon as I had the headlights on, I shifted to drive and smashed the gas pedal to the floor. I flew back down the dirt road as fast as I could possibly drive, and I was still screaming for a few seconds until a very distinct smell began to fill my nostrils. I remember the smell being so pungent and strong that I could taste it, and the very taste of it is what stopped me from screaming, as I did not want to breathe in any more of this odor. It smelled and tasted like the nastiest, mangy dog you could imagine. So needless to say, I ended up going back to my father's house that early morning. LOL. The whole experience played out very quickly, from the time my roof was smacked until the time I was speeding away. I would say the whole thing lasted probably 10 or 15 seconds. I didn't sleep at all that night, and I just kept going over the whole scenario in my head. The part that stands out most to me is how quickly this thing reached my vehicle after I heard the rocks rolling down the embankment. I heard his feet hit the ground only twice in the 20 feet I was parked from the embankment. I took a conservation class in high school, and we were taught how to get an average stride to be used for rough measurements out in the woods and whatnot. I have a stride of 5.3 feet, and I'm 5'10" tall. Whatever this thing was had a stride of about 20 feet. Granted, my stride would go up significantly if I was sprinting, but it would be nowhere near 20 feet. Whatever this thing was had to be nearly twice my height in order to have a stride like that. I wish I could tell you that I caught a glimpse of whatever scared the shit out of me that night, but it was probably better that I didn't. Can't say for sure what did this, but we both know what it is. I've never looked into Bigfoot sightings or anything around that area in Maine, but as I mentioned, my father has had a couple experiences himself in that area. I'm going to let him know about this email, and maybe he'll be inclined to share his experiences with you as well. Feel free to use my name and location of my experience if you want to. Thank you for all your amazing stories, and also for this platform you're working on so hard. Stay safe. Hope life keeps treating you well, Steve. Respectfully, yours, Thomas Grant Jr. Thomas, appreciate your email, man. The location, what happened. And yeah, make sure you share this with your dad. And maybe he will get knee-jerk to share with us what he's got too, alright? That would be possibly be quite valuable for somebody. Without a doubt. Now, let's listen to this one. Here's another one. That'd be terrifying. I've had to sleep in my vehicle a few times in the middle of frickin' nowhere. One time I was broken down just that way, about 40 miles. Now, 20. I could see almost where I was broken down, right near that Nit-Nat Carmana area. On a stormy night. It wasn't a good feeling, thinking, oh God, here we go, right? This is a logger. Hey Steve, appreciate your channel. You know, it'd be really cool is that if you ever got up to near where you had your encounter with that being on the rock, drop in and show us the spot. Just a thought. That'd be neat. Anyhow, I had an encounter in 81 above Priest Lake in Idaho. It wasn't a sighting, but a big roaring screams. Back in them years, Bigfoot wasn't thought of in my world. In other words, there wasn't people going around making calls, tree knocks, and all that other bullshit that goes on now. Anyhow, it was late in the afternoon, getting close to sunset. Oh, I read this. Read it. I hate that. All right, here we go. Excuse me. Steve. My dad started me on wilderness camping at age 9. Although my older brother Tim and I hiked 2 weeks on the entire John Muir Trail when I was 13, hiked every other Yosemite Trail north of the valley the next year, hiked the Immigrant Wilderness area the next year, and hiked in Banff National Park near Lake Louise in Alberta. We never had any strange encounters that we couldn't explain. We slept without tents, just a tarp. I hear noises of deer and even bear checking out our camp at night, but wild animals are timid and run off just by you making noise like coughing or turning over. Certainly, nothing got close enough to sniff us. It wasn't until I was 50 years old camping with my 15-year-old son that I experienced something I couldn't explain. July 2006, my son and I went camping in California's Stanislaus National Forest in the Immigrant Wilderness section. The entrance was close to pine crest and strawberry. It was also the original way that my brother Tim and I entered the park back in the day. Our goal the first day was to get to Bear Lake, then head towards Gem Lake, and then towards Immigrant Lake. It was a moderate 8-mile hike to Bear Lake with a climb of just over 1,000 feet. We got a late start since we arrived at the trailhead around 1 p.m. after coming from the Bay Area. Just before 4 p.m., one of those Sierra thunderstorms hit just as we reach our campsite. Sometimes those storms can come with a sudden drop in temperature. My son was starting to get hypothermia symptoms, so I made some hot chocolate and had him dry off and crawl into a sleeping bag in the tent, which I covered with a hypothermia survival bag. It's a good idea to carry one since they weigh less than a pound and will trap your body heat even in blizzard conditions. Bear Lake is at 7,700 feet elevation. You never know what kind of weather will hit up there. The rain quickly passed and my son felt better, so we had soup for dinner and went to bed. The next day we fished and hiked around the lake. My son caught a trout. We cooked it for dinner. While we were eating dinner, we were observing the sheer face of the granite cliff face next to the lake. My son mentioned that there are many caves in that granite rock formation. It rose about 1,200 feet above the lake on its west side, the side we camped on. Not being a Bigfoot believer, I decided to be funny. I stood up on the flat rock where we were eating next to our tent and did a Tarzan yell while beating my chest. Then I announced that any Bigfoot living up there were welcome to come down for dinner. No one else was at the lake, or I probably wouldn't have acted so silly. My son said didn't think that was a good idea. It was dusk, so I kindled up the fire. We went inside the tent to sleep. That evening, around midnight, something woke me up. I stayed quiet and still while listening. I could hear someone walking, but I knew no one else was at this lake. The campfire was barely going, but it was still producing light. Whoever it was kept slowly circling our tent, maybe 10 to 15 yards away, but it never came in between the campfire and our tent, or I would have seen a shadow. Whatever it was very large, but a bit timid about approaching. I stayed awake and listened for about 30 to 45 minutes, and then it made a bold move, quickly approaching the side of the tent my son was on and stopped. Got the axe ready, figuring this first person was up to no good. Then what shocked me was a finger or a stick was being pushed into the side of the tent about 2 feet off the ground, a good foot to 18 inches into our tent. 18 inches is a long way into the tent. It was a half an inch in diameter, pointy and thin. Then it would pull back and try another spot again, probing. About a foot or a foot and a half, like it was prodding to see what was there. No thanks. Bears don't have index fingers or the means to carry a stick. Deer horns are not that straight or deep, and deer tend to brush from side to side. Besides, once the prong went 18 inches in, you would definitely see a second horn or his nose. This was straight ahead and deliberate, and no second horn. Then it leaned down near the ground and breathed in and out very loudly. I haven't heard breath like that since I rode horses in a full gallop, but this was slow and deliberate, not labored. Its lungs were huge. A 10-second inhale, then a 2-second break, then a 5-second burst of exhale as if it was trying to get our scent. Holy shit. But what was it? It was no human. It was huge like a grizzly, but I already ruled out bear. Bears don't have index fingers. It was all happening on my son's side of the tent, and he was fast asleep. I made the decision that whatever it was not going to give up. By now it was exploring us for almost an hour. Oh my God. It already showed more courage than any animal I've ever encountered in the woods, so my protective instincts kicked in. I was getting angry. I also knew if whatever it was just stepped on us, we were gone for good. If I waited too long, I was sure we both would be injured or killed. Ooh, I got a big fish. Yes. Oh, here we go. Alright, I'm going to try to get through this email, and then I'm going to stop for a bit because the fish are going a little bonkers down there. Just picked up a big lingcod. It hit like a big salmon. I can see on the sound there's a bunch of salmon down there, and I got another bite over there. So I got to get this finished. Hopefully the fish will let me finish it. I decided I needed to plan a surprise attack. I covered my son's mouth and woke him. I used signals to point to the heavy breathing. He heard it too, and his eyes became wide since it was literally a foot from his head. I think I've read this too. I handed him the axe. I had the bear spray we quietly and slowly squeezed out of our bags without making any noise. It was still just inhaling our scent. I signaled using my fingers that the count to 3 we'd unzip the door and jump out with me leading. I unzipped the tent in 2 seconds and was out first. My son right behind me. Nothing was there at all. However, a Douglas fir branch that was violently swaying about 8 feet off the ground, back and forth, as if something big had grabbed it or brushed against it on its way out. I reached into the tent quickly and grabbed the flashlight and shined it out past our campground, but I could see nothing moving. I listened. I could hear nothing. The forest in that part of the Sierras is just not that thick. There were a couple of dozen clusters of Douglas firs clumped together between huge flat slabs of granite. The thicker forest was maybe 200 feet away. This didn't make sense. Then I noticed long footprints on the side of the tent. Probably meant beside the tent, but really elongated. We put more wood in the fire, talked and watched for a while, and eventually went back to sleep. Nothing disturbed us the rest of the night. However, the next morning we got out of the tent and my son noticed something we hadn't noticed in the dark night. About 20 feet from our tent was the flat granite rock where we sat and ate dinner the night before. The same granite slab they stood on to make the Tarzan yell. We cleaned everything off of it the night before, but whatever it was, left us a message made of small granite rocks put in what I'd call a 3-foot Q, with the bottom of the Q pointing directly at our tent. Furthermore, there were about 20 points of this Q, and each point was either a single rock or a stack of 2 rocks. Some points even had 2 rocks balanced against each other in the form of a small tent. You need hands in order to make this sign. No bear could make this. The small rocks were all about the same 2-inch circumference. I didn't have a camera to take a picture of the sign, so I drew it on a paper napkin. No animal on earth could produce that. Also, we're the only campers on the lake that night. No one else for miles. We could see the entire lake shore. I'm retired, so you can use my first name. By the way, the next 2 summers we returned to the same spot since we decided that it was just curious or we would not still be alive. In those trips, we experienced the long, loud cries it makes. We set up trail cameras and got some weird, funny photos too close to make out anything but gray, reddish hair. Oh, no way. And these cameras were pulled off the tree at a height of about 8 feet off the ground. One morning just before twilight, my son told me that while I was asleep, he saw a 7 to 8 foot man standing next to the tree with one of the game cameras. It was very dark and it was still dark out, and he could not make out any features. Holy shit, Mike. That is one hell of a terrifying frickin' experience. I wouldn't want to go through that no matter what. Especially with a child in the tent. It's so alarming. Alright, I gotta get my butt busy here. See if I can't catch a big salmon. I'm kind of sucking at the salmon right now, but I gotta start fishing. I guess I can. I can't catch when I'm just sitting here, right? I'll be back again shortly.